and welcome. I'm Ashley from The Ugly Sheep, and today we're going to make a scarf out of hand-spun yarn. A few years ago, I took a class on spinning luxury fibers, things like silk and merino wool. And I had a lot of fiber left over, and so I spent several weeks making small little Rolegs of various different colors and silk types together in order to spin. And then it took me more than a year, not consistently, working to spin this yarn on spindles. And I ended up with almost 10 skeins of yarn. So now today is the day we start weaving with it. In a previous video, I've already made the warp, and I will put a card up above if you would like to watch it. The first step that I'm doing here is to start warping my loom, but that's because I already have my warp chain. I typically weave from front to back, meaning that I start threading the reed first, and then my heddles, and I put it onto the back beam last. This just works better for my brain, especially when I'm doing a more complicated heddle pattern like I am doing for this scarf. This is also going to end up being enough space to make 2 scarves, because I'm not entirely sure this is going to work out with my materials, or if I'm going to have a take 2. And we're still warping on another day. The next part of warping is to tie the ends onto the back beam so that I can wind them on. And this is a little bit of a messy process if you don't keep your threads in order the way you're supposed to. And I find that with this yarn in particular, it is extra challenging because it is a very stretchy yarn, and you don't want to risk stretching it more in some places than the others because it will be very noticeable. Some slight differences in tension in a sturdier yarn that has less stretch is not going to be as noticeable as you weave and in your final product. Once I have the warp wound onto the warp beam in the back, I will tie the yarn onto the front beam so that I can then spread the warp and start to weave. This pattern is a twill pattern, and so I have to be careful as I'm weaving to not beat it down too hard as you see me move the reed, which is that wooden part that I move back and forth, because it might pack it in too much and not make it a nice flowy fabric. The other thing that I really have to be mindful of with this yarn is to not stretch it as I pull it through the shed, because it is a very, very stretchy yarn. Not just because it's wool and it's hand spun, but this yarn is only a single ply, which means it does not have the other strands of yarn to kind of help hold it in place. While most of this video has been sped up, this is a real-time how long it takes in order to weave a project. It is a very slow process. I could have used an additional warp that I do not thread in order to make my selvages a little easier to keep neat, because the twill does not allow me to just weave back and forth. I have to catch it on the outermost warp thread so that it doesn't pull away and miss a couple of threads in the warp. I typically weave with my pattern to my right, if it's on a table loom, along with a pad of paper to keep track of how much I've woven. Since this is supposed to be a specific size, I want to make sure that I don't stop too soon or too late, so that I can ensure that I fit 2 scarves on this warp if I need to. When I use my table loom on our dining room table, I am a little too short if I sit down and weave, and a little too tall if I stand and weave, so I often transition between both standing and sitting to kind of give my back a break. Even though I am twisting fringe for this project, I have elected to hem stitch the beginning and the end of the scarf. Generally speaking, I hem stitch all of my projects because even if I'm going to cut it up or I am going to do the fringe, it just keeps it neat until I am ready to work with it. If I am going to cut the fabric up in the end, I still need to wash it before I can cut it up, and so the hem stitch prevents it from fraying in the wash. And for something like this where I'm going to twist fringe, hem stitching it helps keep those bottom lines even and nice and neat while I am twisting the fringe, instead of them starting to fall out with the lack of tension. Now for winding the fringe. This is part of the reason that I don't always love to make scarves. Scarves in and of themselves are a great way to try out new patterns because they're small, and then you can see how the pattern comes together and whether you like it without investing a lot of time. But in order for the fringe, especially wool fringe like this is, to stay nice and neat over time, you have to twist it. And this is just a very long and tedious project. Also, you're going to have to excuse the sweatpants and sweatshirt that you're going to see for the remainder of this video, because the daytime low as I'm recording is a whopping 7 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm freezing. So we are dressed for warmth the rest of the day and not for aesthetics. I am really happy with how this scarf turned out. I was a little concerned at first because all of my materials are wool and therefore really stretchy. And it would be really easy to have some unevenness in the scarf because of this stretch. And it looks amazing. I am very excited for it. And I was able to get 2 scarves done from it. Well, one is still in progress, but I have enough materials to finish it. So if you like this scarf, the link for it will be down below because it will be for sale because I do not need 2 of them. And while you're down there looking at the scarf, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. See you next time.